In some island regions of Japan, such as Izu Oshima, there remains a strange custom of not looking at the sea and staying indoors as much as possible on the night of January 24th. It is said that breaking this taboo brings misfortune to oneself and those around them. This time, I will introduce two stories related to this custom, although they are said to be from regions other than the Izu Islands. A usually friendly colleague adamantly refuses to go to the sea for some reason. I asked him why, but he didn't seem to want to talk about it, so I made him drink and forced it out of him. Here's his story. However, since he was drunk and rambled on, I've organized it. When he was still a student, he went on a trip with a friend. It was right after the end of term exams, so it was midwinter. The trip was casual. They just rode around aimlessly in a van with his friend's beloved dog. After a few days, they arrived at a run-down seaside village by the time the sun had already set. It was a small settlement, clinging precariously between the mountains and the sea. Unfortunately, our gas was running low. Driving along a single road by the coast, they soon found a gas station, but it was already closed. They decided to check around the back. From the eaves of the entrance, a large basket was hanging. Thinking it was in the way, they pushed it aside and rang the bell. "Excuse me, could we get some gas?" They sensed someone was there, but got no response. "Are we being ignored?"
It's annoying. Try pressing it again.
"Excuse me!" As we persistently called out, the entrance light turned on, and a silhouette appeared behind the glass door.
"Who is it?
"We need some
We're
gas."
closed today."
An irritated voice responded before I could finish speaking.
Well, can't you make an exception?
"No, we can't open today."
There was no room for negotiation, so we gave up and returned to the car.
That's why I can't stand the countryside.
Nothing we can do. Let's sleep here tonight and get gas first thing in the morning to spite them.
As we wandered around the village looking for a place to park, we noticed that all the shops and houses had their doors closed, not just the gas station. Looking closely, we saw that every house had baskets or bamboo sieves hanging from their eaves.
Is it some kind of festival?
It seems too quiet for that.
The wind is unbearable. Or we can park over there.
We found a small parking lot at the base of stone steps that led straight from a small shrine on the mountainside to the sea. The lot was shielded by a hedge, providing some protection from the sea breeze. After parking the car in the shadow of the Torii Gate, it was already pitch dark with nothing to do. Muttering to ourselves, we wrapped up in blankets in the driver's seat and went to sleep. After who knows how many hours, I woke up to the dogs growling and noticed a strong, fishy smell in the air. The dog was facing the sea, baring its teeth and growling continuously. Normally a calm animal, it wouldn't settle down no matter how much I tried to soothe it. My friend also woke up and strained his eyes to see into the darkness. The moonlit sea, which had looked normal earlier, now seemed eerily calm. We could see something wriggling along the edge of the stark concrete seawall.
What is that?
My friend whispered in a hoarse voice. "I don't know." At first, it looked like a thick pipe or log crawling out of the sea. It slithered onto the land like a snake, but strangely, there was no sound. In fact, it seemed more like a mass of black, swirling smoke, and I couldn't tell if it had a solid form. Instead, there was a continuous, indescribable humming sound, like a low ooh or woo. The foul smell from earlier had become overwhelmingly nauseating. The thing's front end had crossed the road along the coast and reached the house opposite, while its other end was still lost in the sea. Though it wasn't clearly visible, the front end seemed to have something resembling a face peering into the house's eaves. Neither my friend nor I considered ourselves particularly cowardly, but the sight of it was so utterly malevolent that our bodies froze the moment we saw it. The feeling of having one's heart gripped tightly must be something like that. The thing seemed to stare intently at the basket hanging under the eaves before it slowly began to move towards the next house.
Hey, start the car!
My friend's trembling voice snapped me back to reality. I somehow managed to lift my paralyzed arm and turn the key, the engine roaring to life in the otherwise silent surroundings. The thing began to slowly turn towards us. This is bad. I didn't know why, but I instinctively felt that I shouldn't make eye contact with it. Keeping my eyes fixed straight ahead, I floored the accelerator and the car shot forward. From the back seat, the dog started barking madly. Then I heard a wheezing sound like an asthmatic gasp, followed by a heavy thud as it collapsed.
Taro!
My friend turned around reflexively, then froze, gasping in horror.
Idiot, don't look back!
Desperately, I grabbed my friend's shoulder and yanked him forward. When he turned back, his face was contorted with fear, his eyes completely unfocused. It's embarrassing to admit, but I kept crying and screaming in sheer terror as I pressed the accelerator to the floor. We drove back along the road we had come from, continuing until we ran out of gas and crossed the mountain pass. We stayed awake all night until morning came. My friend was barely conscious and had to be hospitalized at a nearby clinic, suffering from a high fever for about a week. Even after he recovered, he became extremely emotionally unstable whenever the incident was mentioned, so I never found out what he saw when he turned around. After graduation, we drifted apart. As for the dog, it became severely agitated, biting anyone it could, and then collapsed foaming at the mouth repeatedly. Sadly, it had to be put to sleep. In the end, I don't know what that thing was, and I don't want to know. Anyway, I stay away from the sea. That's my colleague's story. It reminds me of something I once read by Kunio Yanagita about the use of baskets and sieves as charms against evil and the taboo against looking at the sea on certain days. But I can't compare it now because I don't have the book with me.
In September, my great-aunt passed away and our whole family stayed over for the wake and funeral. In our family, my great-aunt was the oldest living relative, and the women in our family hold a lot of power. Because of this, many distant relatives gathered for the funeral. There was a cousin named Shuji who was close to my age, and he was the only relative I used to play with. It had been about 15 years since I last saw him, but at the wake, only Shuji's parents and sister were there. Shuji, whom I had been looking forward to seeing, was not. This reminded me of a similar experience in elementary school when there was another relative's funeral. I think it was my great-aunt's husband. After the funeral, Shuji and I played together and had a scary experience. My father's side of the family is a bit unusual in that the family inheritance is passed down to the eldest daughter instead of the eldest son. Most of my father's relatives, including my great-aunt, live in the region along the Sea of Japan. My father, being the third son, moved away and settled in Osaka, so we were not tied to the family's customs. Shuji's family, like ours, had also moved away from their hometown and lived in Kanagawa. Every year during summer vacation, a little before the Obon festival, we would all gather at my great-aunt's house, participate in memorial services and local festivals, and spend time together as a family. Since our family and Shuji's family came from far away, we would stay at my great-aunt's house for several nights. My great-aunt's house is near the sea. You can see the ocean just across the road. So Shuji and I often went to the beach to play. One winter when I was in 2nd or 3rd grade, there was a funeral at my great-aunt's house. Our family stayed over for the wake and funeral, and Shuji's family did the same. I was a carefree person back then, even more so as a child. I wasn't thinking about the funeral. I was just excited to play with Shuji. We left in the morning, arrived at my great-aunt's house, had a meal, and then it was time for the wake. I only remember it being incredibly boring since I couldn't play at all. When we stayed over, there was an annex behind the house where we usually slept, but this time it was full of other relatives, so we stayed in the main house. After dinner, I remember a relative muttering, "Why did he have to pass away on a day like this?" The next morning, when I woke up, my great-aunt, grandmother, and other relatives were bustling around, hanging small baskets or something similar made of woven wood in front of the house. They were attaching strange paper strips to them. They hung these on every door and window. Since they were dangling by a single string, I couldn't resist playing with them, but my father scolded me. Then they started closing all the shutters, and in places without shutters like the kitchen, they used large pieces of washi paper pinned to the window frames. My first thought was that these must be customs when someone passed away. The funeral service started early in the morning. I don't remember much about the middle part, but it was mostly over by early afternoon. I might have been a heartless child, but all I could think about was that I could finally play once it was over. We had lunch at some point, but I remember that no one talked much. I don't remember the exact time, but all the other relatives left by car fairly early, leaving just my family and Shuji's family in the main house. I had imagined a lively meal with all the relatives like we did in the summer, but I only recall getting scolded by the adults just for chatting a bit with Shuji. When Shuji and I were playing inside the house, we were scolded and told to be quiet. In the evening, I wanted to watch my usual TV program, but I got scolded again when I said,
"I want to watch TV."
We were told,
"Just stay quiet."
Thinking back, neither my parents, my great-aunt, nor my grandmother were talking at all. Bored out of our minds, Shuji and I decided to go see the ocean. When we were putting on our shoes at the entrance, my grandmother came running with a frantic look on her face. She hit me on the head, grabbed my clothes, and dragged me to the dining room. In the dining room, Shuji's father was there, and both he and my grandmother told us very seriously,
"You absolutely cannot go outside today. Stay on the second floor."
Without talking much, Shuji and I played Othello or something, and before we knew it, we had been put to bed on the second floor. I don't know how long I slept, but I remember waking up because it was cold. As I went downstairs from the second floor, I noticed a fishy smell, a bit different from the usual sea smell at fishing spots. When I peeked into the living room to check the clock, I saw my great-aunt and my parents reading newspapers, and no one was talking. It felt oddly unsettling, so after using the toilet, I was heading back upstairs when I ran into Shuji in the hallway.
"Hey, someone is supposed to visit outside this house at night."
Shuji said. Apparently, my great-aunt and the others had mentioned something like that this morning, and Shuji had overheard it. We wanted to check it out, but the shutters on the second floor were closed, so we couldn't see outside.
Maybe the bathroom window can open?
I remembered that the small bathroom window had frosted glass and no shutters. The bathroom was on the side of the house facing the sea, the roadside, so we decided to go there and take a look. The bathroom in winter was incredibly cold, but the idea that something might be out there, combined with a sense of being in a secret hideout, gave me a strange excitement and a chill down my spine.
Is there really someone out there?
I whispered to Shuji, and he whispered back,
"There is, Grandma said so."
The small bathroom window was too high for elementary school kids like us to see through. There was a water supply pipe running to the toilet, so we had to stand on it to look out the window. I was the first to look outside. Carefully and quietly, I slid the window open and peered outside. Under the eaves, a basket was swaying. At the edge of my vision, something long was stretching from the road to the house. I couldn't make it out clearly, but the near end of that long thing seemed to be slowly moving towards us. After watching it for about 10 seconds, an overwhelming sense of fear hit me, and I shivered as I closed the window.
"Did you see anyone?"
I don't know, but there was something.
I want to see too.
It looks like it's coming this way. Let's run.
I was probably on the verge of tears. The cold and the unknown fear made me want to scream and run away immediately.
Hey, let's go back.
I opened the bathroom door and pulled Shuji's hand.
I want to see just a little bit. Just a tiny bit.
Shuji shook off my hand, returned, and stood on the water supply pipe to look out the window. He slid the window open and peered outside, but he didn't move for a while, still looking out.
Hey, that's enough, right? Let's go back.
Hey, this is...
Shuji started to say something, but stopped midway. He made a strained, gasping sound while still looking outside. As I stood there, confused and flustered, I heard a noise behind me.
What are you two doing?
Shuji's father was standing behind us with a terrifying expression. Before I could make any excuse or say a word, Shuji's father grabbed my collar and threw me out of the bathroom into the hallway. A moment later, Shuji was also thrown into the hallway, and then the bathroom door was slammed shut. My parents and great-aunt, hearing the noise, came over.
You fools!
My father slapped me, and my great-aunt grabbed me.
Did you see it? You see it?
Though I thought she was angry, my great-aunt looked like she was about to cry. I became more and more scared, not understanding anything, surrounded by the adults' furious expressions.
I looked outside, but it was dark, so I couldn't see anything clearly, and stopped looking quickly.
When I answered, my great-aunt shouted,
Are you sure? Did you see its face?
I denied while crying. Behind this exchange, my father and my grandmother, who had come over, were placing a large piece of luggage in front of the bathroom door to block it. Shuji's father was shaking Shuji's shoulders, saying,
Shuji, what about you?
Worried, I also looked over at Shuji. Shuji was laughing. Though it sounded like he was hiccuping, his face had a strained expression that looked like he was both laughing and crying.
Shuji!
His father continued to shake and call out to him, but Shuji's expression didn't change. For a moment, everyone was at a loss for words, and the scene I saw in the dim hallway was terrifying enough to make my teeth chatter. Shuji was taken to the inner Buddhist room. My great-aunt was making a phone call somewhere. In the living room, Shuji's mother and sister looked pale. When my great-aunt returned from the phone call, she hurriedly said,
We'll take Shuji to him as soon as dawn breaks.
Shuji's parents just kept nodding. My grandmother and parents grabbed my arms and took me to the second floor. I was immediately changed into different clothes and thrown into the futon that had been laid out.
You mustn't leave this room today.
My grandmother said this and left. From the other side of the closed sliding door, I could hear something that sounded like a sutra. That night, my parents stayed with me. I was too scared to turn off the light, so I clung to my parents' legs, trembling under the covers. My hands and feet were unusually cold. The next morning, when my grandmother came to get me and I went downstairs, Shuji was gone. I was only told that Shuji had a fever and went to the hospital. When I left the room, I noticed that the baskets that had been hung by the entrance and windows yesterday were also hanging in front of the room I had slept in. While we were having breakfast, my great-aunt said something like,
You kids really did something foolish.
My parents seemed to have already packed up, and we left right after breakfast. We apologized to my great-aunt and grandmother, and then we left the house. That night, when we got home, I had a fever and missed school the next day. That's the story from my childhood. From the following year onward, I wasn't taken to my great-aunt's house anymore. I only went back once during the summer of my second year of middle school. Even then, my relatives had gathered, but Shuji wasn't there. Shuji's mother just said, Shuji's busy, but at my great-aunt's funeral this September, I heard another relative say, It seems Shuji never got back to normal. I don't know what Shuji saw that night, and I'm not entirely sure what I saw either. When I asked my father about that time, all he would say was, There is the day when you should never see the sea.
These stories are not thought to be from the Aizu Islands, but it is said that in Aizu Oshima, where similar customs remain, Some inns do not operate on January 24th. If you plan to visit the Aizu Islands on that day, be careful and never see the sea.